week one of the NFL season at Soldier Field. And in my lifetime, the greatest Bears quarterback in their history is Jim McMahon. And Jim McMahon joins us on the morning roast here on 95.7 The Game with Joe Shasky, the Butcher, and Vontae Hill. Look, Jim McMahon's a legend, two-time Super Bowl champ, of course, led those 85 Bears alongside that strong defense. Jim, what is happening, man? Thanks for joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Just waking up here in Arizona.
How's it living in Arizona, man? That dry heat? How you living? How's retirement treating you?
I love the heat. We were just talking earlier before we came on. I grew up in San Jose, so I don't like the cold weather. Never did. Give me 80 degrees every day. It's a little hotter than that here now, but the other, if you can stand 4 months of heat, the other 8 months are pretty nice.
Well, how'd you withstand Chicago then, playing in that cold weather that you were at that frigid turf?
I hated it. I hated every minute of it. Not only did we have to play in it, we had to practice in it. We didn't have an indoor facility back then. Our little facility, I mean, our college and even high school was better facilities than we had in Chicago. It was a joke, but I hated the cold. It was brutal.
Jim, I want to get right into the Niners and the Bears. Obviously, in 1984, the Niners end up knocking out the Bears, and Guy McIntyre comes in and gets a touchdown late in that game that really pissed off Mike Ditka. Take me back to that time. I know you weren't the starting quarterback at that time, but did you guys hate the 49ers, and did you feel it was, mutual in terms of the hatred going back and forth?
Well, growing up, I was always a Niner Raider fan. And Giants and A's, those were my teams.
Right.
And 1984, we had a pretty good ball club. We ended up losing to you guys in the NFC Championship game. That's the year I had hurt my kidney. I think week 10, something like that. So I missed the last 6 games. But we knew we were going to have a good football team. And then we came back out there in 85 and got a win there, and then ended up winning the Super Bowl. But yeah, Niners were always tough. I mean, playing against Joe, and I only lost to him once, but that was a big one, the 88 NFC Championship game. And that was tough to swallow at home. But, it was always fun to play the Niners.
Jim, talk about that 85 season. You guys come back to Candlestick Park, and you unleash Refrigerator Perry as a fullback to send a message to the Niners for playing Guy McIntyre at fullback. What tone did that set for that team that season? What was it like headed off to Fridge in the backfield?
Well, like you said, that all came about just to get back at Bill Walsh for what he did, with Guy McIntyre. He put him back there. You guys ran it down our throats for about 6 minutes. So that was the start of the whole circus. He wanted to get back at Bill. And then, Fridge gained half a yard that first carry, but then it got pretty interesting. I threw him a touchdown pass. He was actually supposed to throw a ball in the Super Bowl. Thank God he didn't throw it. But he was an amazing athlete. For his size, he had great quickness, and where are you going to grab him to tackle him? He was pretty much round. I mean, he got nowhere to hang on to. And he had a lot of speed, and the sound that he made when he hit some of those linebackers when he was blocking for Walter, it was amazing.
Your Bears team was so good, and obviously the 85 team stands alone. I just look at the NFC as a whole at that time, the Eagles, the Giants, the Washington football team, obviously the 49ers. You guys, are you surprised you didn't get one more Super Bowl with that Bears team?
We probably should have had 2 or 3 more with that team. Like I said, 84, we had our shot. We weren't healthy, but 85, we were 15-1. 86, we were 14-2. We had the best record in football. It wasn't like we fell off the planet.
Right.
Unfortunately, again, I missed the playoff game there, and we ended up losing to Washington. We came back in 80. For the next 4 years, we had home field advantage.
Yeah.
86, 87, 88, we had home field advantage. And we just didn't take advantage of that. We work all season long to get that home field and play in that cold weather that everybody said bear weather. That was, bullshit. That was polar bear weather. I don't want to play in here. That's when I started wearing gloves, because you just, it gets that cold that those balls are like seeds. And I started wearing gloves, during the playoffs, and I ended up wearing the rest of my career, even in the heat, because the tackiness on the gloves helped me hold the ball.
We're talking to Jim McMahon, two-time Super Bowl champ, obviously led that 85 Bears team, one of the greatest teams of all time, definitely one of the greatest defenses of all time. Walter Payton in the backfield. Jim McMahon was a stud playing for Mike Dickon. You brought up, 86, 87, 88. We remember the Niners game, the NFC Championship game, where Jerry Rice has some big touchdowns. What do you attribute those playoff shortcomings to? Obviously, you mentioned you were hurt. But those other years, because we hear a lot of outspoken Bears defenders, Otis Smith, Mike Singletary. A lot of people feel like you, Jim, that you guys should have won more. What did you attribute that to?
Well, in 87 and 88, we weren't the same as we were in 85 and 86. We'd lost Wilbur Marshall, Willie Gault, and I think we were tired. It wasn't like today. I mean, we had pads on every day. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday was like game day for us. We had no periods that were buddy. Everything was live during our practices. Dick says you don't learn unless you do it the right way, and you do it the right way by playing the game. So our practices lasted 3.5 hours. We beat the hell out of each other, and then he'd run us to death. I mean, we'd run until he couldn't blow the whistle anymore. And I think we just got tired. I was there 7 years, and we did the same thing every week for 7 years. And I was exhausted. And hell, I wasn't hitting anybody. I'd get hit every once in a while. Buddy'd say, don't hit 34, don't hit 9. And they'd always whack 9 a few times. They'd never hit Walter. But those were brutal practices. And I think that those took its toll, towards the end of the year for sure.
Well, the 49ers, in contrast, were kind of seen as a softer team, a more pass-happy team, not as brutally punishing. And obviously the famous, at least from a 49er perspective, is the conversation of Ronnie Lott and Keena Turner after that NFC Championship game. The finesse 49ers came into Soldier Field. What was your guys' opinions of the 49ers, of Joe Montana for that particular era?
No, they were not a finesse team. They were very physical. Any team you're going to play on that has Ronnie Lott on it, you're going to have a physical football team. Mm-hmm. We knew they were good, and offensively, they had Jerry. They had I think John Taylor at the time. Yep. They had I can't remember which one of the tight ends they had was good. Roger Craig in the backfield. I mean, they had a good football team, and they were not a finesse team. Bill Walsh was a type of coach. I mean, he was going to pick you apart, and that's what he did to us.
Jim McMahon on the Morning Roast here on 95.7 The Game. Jim, it feels like it's Chicago's one of the blue blood franchises. They're one of the franchises where you look at the NFL, it's the Bears, it's the Packers, it's the Niners, it's the Cowboys. You guys are right there. Are you surprised that city of Chicago hasn't celebrated a Super Bowl since your 85 team? And heck, they're still looking for a quarterback. They're hoping Justin Fields is the answer, but really they've been looking for a quarterback since you retired, since you left Chicago.
Well, Chicago's I don't even know how to put this. It's tough to be a quarterback there, that's for sure, because they've always been known for their defense, mm-hmm. and who's their running back. Back in the day, they had Gale Sayers, they had Walter. They've always had great running backs and great defense, and so it's tough to be a quarterback. You're supposed to be like almost the face of the franchise, and the offenses that I played in, hell, it was so boring and so I hated it. I mean, it was after just coming from BYU where I got to throw the ball all over the field, and then come there and I get to throw it. I threw it more in the first quarter at BYU than I threw it in games at Chicago. It was no fun at all. But yeah, it's just tough to be a QB there. Unless you have an offensive line, doesn't matter where you play QB at, you're not going to be successful. And I don't know how good the Bears line is now for Fields. I know Fields, he's a big time player, played at Ohio State, had great success there. So I'm sure as long as he has the people around him, he can be successful. I never cared who my receivers or backs were. I wanted 5 guys up front that wanted to fight, and you win games that way. And our guys didn't get the credit that they deserve. We finally got a guy into the Hall of Fame, Jimbo Covert, 2 years ago. But those guys, we led the league in rushing 4 straight years, which had never been done. and I don't think it's been done since. And everybody knew we were going to run the ball. So that's a big time credit to those guys up front, and they didn't get the credit that they deserve for sure.
Are you shocked that the city of Chicago hasn't celebrated the championship since '85?
Not really, because they're pretty cheap. They've always been cheap. Mike Ditka left Chicago when he was a player, when he had to deal with George Halas. He left because they wouldn't pay him. And then when he became coach and our guys would sit out, he'd be complaining about it. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute now. You did the same thing. You left Chicago because they wouldn't pay you. It's amazing how they forget when they become coaches or get up in the front office, how they were as players.
You referenced Mike Ditka right there, and one of the lasting images you'll see of just Bears fans in general is dressing up as Mike Ditka. What was your relationship like when you were a player and he was your coach?
Well, originally it was pretty good. He was a rookie coach my first year in the league as well, and it wasn't like I had to sit behind a couple of Hall of Famers. I had Bob Avellini and Vince Evans were the two QBs that were here. So I think he wanted me to play early. I wanted to play early too. I didn't want to sit there and watch. Mm-hmm. I think I started the second half of the second game my rookie year, and then from then on I was pretty much playing. But we had a pretty good relationship early. I think he understands now I knew what I was doing, but at the time he thought I did things just to piss him off. Mike was a tight end, great football. I would have loved to play with the guy. He was a great player, played the game the way it's supposed to be played. And had he been in my huddle, I think he would have understood me better and knew that I knew what I was doing. But he was not an offensive coordinator. He was a tight end. That's how he liked to call plays, like a tight end. He had no clue what he was doing as far as setting things up and stuff like that. And I was always taught back in college, if you can see something on the defense that you can exploit, to do it. And so I was used to, I'd see blitz. I'm thinking home run. And Mike was the grind it out. We're going to run the ball, control the clock. And I said, why don't we just outscore people? We got a hell of a lot of talent. We didn't have just Walter Payton. We had speed on the outside with Willie. We had my other receiver, Dennis McKinnon, very solid player. Good tight end with Emory Moorhead, and Tim Reitman was there as well. We had a lot of good talent. Dennis Gentry, I thought, was the best third down back in football. He shouldn't even have been a third down back, in my opinion, but great talent. And we just we didn't use our guys properly. We were very predictable. I was the wild card because they, even though we set up in certain formations, they didn't know if I was going to run the play that they thought was coming. And a lot of times Ditka knew I didn't call the play that was called in the huddle. We'd get up to the line, he's screaming in my ear I'd always tell the guy who's controlling that thing in your ear to shut that thing off. I didn't want to hear him screaming at me.
Have you talked to him lately?
I actually saw him about a month ago. I was back in Chicago for an event, his Gridiron Greats event. He's struggling a little bit with his health. Not as bad as my other teammate, Steve McMichael. He's in bad shape with ALS. And really, really eating him up, and it's tough to see. He's a great football player, great teammate, one of the biggest, strongest guys to play in the league. And now to see him like this is cool. It's tough.
Jim, you bring up, you talk about Mike Ditka and how predictable you guys are. It feels like for Shasky and I, after watching all the 30 for 30s, because we're suckers for the NFL and all the history of the Bears and those teams, it feels like a lot of those players preferred Buddy Ryan over Mike Ditka. And a lot of guys are very outspoken on Mike Ditka, on his choices at the quarterback spot, on how he ran the offense. Did you prefer Buddy Ryan, or did you want to see Buddy Ryan be elevated or promoted to being the head coach instead of leaving for Philadelphia?
Well, Buddy, I thought, was going to get the head job before Mike Ditka. Buddy was on the staff. And the reason that they kept Buddy was the whole defensive team wrote a letter to George Halas and said, hey, we, no matter who the head coach is, we want to keep Buddy Ryan as our coach. And that's the reason Buddy kept him. And so, George kept him, Halas. So it was a lot of friction there, because Buddy knew he couldn't be fired because George Halas gave him a lifetime deal. So, and he took advantage of that. He pretended he was the head coach a lot. I remember Ditka walked into one of Buddy's first meetings, and from defensive guys told me this and said, hey, he walked in and Buddy says, hey, get the fuck out of my meeting. I run the defense. And so, you kind of lose respect right out of the gate when that happens. But so, like I said, our offense or our practices were tough because of that. Buddy wasn't going to give an inch. Mike wasn't going to give an inch. And, Fridays, we do live goal line and short yardage scrimmage.
Wow.
And the defensive guys would yell, hey, they're cutting me. And Buddy goes, well, they cut you in the game? Yeah, deal with it. That was his coaching philosophy. You just deal with it. React. Their favorite was react like a football player, right? How many times you heard that?
Hey, Jim, you were one of the guys that, to me, I always saw you with all the flair. You had the headband, the shades, like everything about you seemed rock star, at least to me, as a kid growing up. What would you have been like had social media existed when you were playing?
I'd have been arrested probably.
Why?
No, I would not be too happy in today's world because I don't like doing it now. I do have a Twitter page. My son usually takes care of that. I've got some other people that do that for me because I'm just not that interested in what people do all day long. I could care less. It's great to see pictures of my grandkids and stuff like that on Instagram, whatever. But other than that, I could care less about that. It's just those people have no lives.
hey, but at least you get to sell your merchandise on there. Postgame.shop. We can go to your Twitter page and see it and click on the link. You're also on Cameo. So talk about Cameo. How much money are people spending for you to wish
what are they asking you to?
Yeah, what are they asking you to do?
What are they asking you to do on Cameo?
Right.
Cameo is basically a lot of birthday wishes, anniversaries, people, getting a new job, just real simple stuff. I mean, it's just basically a shout out. Hey, thanks for being a fan, whatever, whatever. They kind of write a little script for you, what they want you to say. So
are you surprised people spend money on that for you to wish them a happy birthday?
Yeah, it does surprise me. I know a friend of mine, Brian Baumgartner, plays on The Office. I think he made like $1 million in 1 year on Cameo. I mean, he must be busy all day long.
Right.
I'd probably do 2 or 3 a week, maybe, and that's good for me.
I was asking you before the podcast started here, and we were talking about BYU and your time at BYU, and you're a BYU legend. Your number 9 is retired, and right. I didn't realize the rich legacy of BYU and especially offensive football. And you were talking like, hey, you were able to do so much more in college than what you were doing with Chicago. Take me back to BYU because I referenced Steve Young coming in as the 8th string quarterback his freshman year, and you're the big superstar All-American Jim McMahon. Andy Reid was part of the staff, and Norm Chow, and there's all these different names. Why was BYU such a hotbed for offensive innovation in the early 80s?
I think the number one reason was, Lavelle knew that he had to do something to get some national recognition because of his school. He wasn't they weren't in a big time conference. Mm-hmm. And so he decided he wanted to throw the football, do something a little different back then. And the best hire he ever made, I think, was Doug Scoville. Ended up being the San Diego State head coach. He coached in the pros for a while. This guy was an offensive guru. I mean, I learned more from him in 2 years than I learned in 15 years in the pros. I mean, he was just very imaginative, and everybody thought we had a complicated offense. It wasn't complicated at all. You got 5 guys that can do nothing but block, right? So it's not a very, if you can add, it's not a very tough thing to figure out. But he just had a way of he just liked to see the scoreboard light up. He'd come in on Thursday night or Friday night, whenever we're going to play the next day, and say, I want to see that scoreboard looking like Las Vegas. I want those lights changing all the time. He just loved to throw the ball, put up points. We get a long pass down to somebody get tackled around the 2 or 3 or even the 1. And Lavelle would say, hey, you going to run it in now? You go, hell no. We got it down there throwing. We're going to throw it in. So I got a few of those cheap little 1-yarders.
Well, you started your career at BYU as a punter. You were kicking. And then you played in You played in perhaps one of the most legendary Holiday Bowls of all time. We always watch the Holiday Bowl over and over and over down in San Diego. They've had some classic games. But you're on the field, and on the other side, there's Eric Dickerson and Craig James. You guys are down 20 with 4 minutes left. And you guys come back and win that game. And a lot of people say it was you screaming at everybody, this game's not bleeping over yet. And you guys come back. Is that one of the most thrilling games you've ever been a part of? Take us through that one, going against the Pony Express and SMU.
Well, the last 4 minutes was fun. Yeah, I played terrible in the first half. That's why we got down. But yeah, they had the best team money could buy back then in college football. I think they had 8 first rounders on that team, and they were running up and down on us all night long, and I wasn't playing well in offense. We just started clicking in the second half, started doing things right, and moving the ball and scoring a few points. But yeah, like you said, 4 minutes to go, we're down 20. I think we're on our 20-yard line. We start moving the ball around midfield. It's 4th down, and the coach sent in the punting team, and I said, get in the huddle. And guys go, hey, the punting team's coming in. I said, get in the huddle. I said, we ain't kicking this ball. And we had our last timeout, I guess. They had to burn the timeout because I wouldn't come off the field. And when I did, I just casually, well, not casually, I was a little pissed. And I said, I said, what are you giving up? You quitting? I said, we kick now, we got no shot. He said, we're down 20 points. Who cares? I said, but I'm not going out kicking the ball. And Lavelle looked at Doug, and Doug looked at, they didn't know what to do. And I'm like, I got this. I went back in the field, and I just in the huddle, I said, all right, I'm going to call the play on the line of scrimmage, and gave myself an even formation. And for some reason, they weren't covering my All-American tight end, Clay Brown. So I knew I just called a simple little out to Clay to get the first down. We went down and scored. We kicked an onside kick, got the onside kick, went down and scored again, and then tried another onside kick. We didn't get it, but now our defense has got a hold, and they haven't held all night, and they held them, for 3 downs. They kept them from 10 yards. So now they got a punt. They punt. We blocked the punt. We get the ball back. I think there was about 18 seconds left, right around midfield, maybe on their side of the ball or their side of midfield. And time for about 3 plays, I'm thinking. And so the first play, I come back, and I'm trying to hit Clay Brown coming across the field. And just at the last second, I noticed that the corner on the other side had come off his man. And had I thrown a good pass to Clay, it would have been picked. Game was over. And I caught him just as I'm releasing the ball, and it just fluttered out of my hand. Thank God it was way behind him, or else it was, like I said, it was picked. The next play, I think I just threw it out of the end zone. Now we got 3 seconds left, and I'm like, okay, all right, guys, we come back too far. Let's, somebody get in the damn end zone and catch this ball. And I said, Lion, you got to give me a little extra time, because we had a bunch of slow white boys. We got to give them time to get down there. And so I went back and just threw it as high as I could throw it, and then I just watched, and I'm watching and watching. I'm seeing Clay running down the middle, and a couple of other guys coming towards the middle. And then I just see like 4 or 5 white shirts go up, and Clay was the only guy in the middle of this stack, and he was the only guy to touch that ball. I mean, they all went up for it, and nobody touched it but Clay. It went right down in his hand. He said at the bottom of the pile, they were trying to rip it out, and they finally cleared it out, and they went touchdown. So that tied the game. And this is one of Lavelle's great stories, because my dad used to tease Lavelle, hey, those Catholics won the game for you. Because Clay Brown was Catholic, I was Catholic. The guy that blocked the punt, Bill Shefflin, was Catholic. And my dad said, oh, they won the game for you, Lavelle. And Lavelle said, no. Your Catholic boys tied the game. My little Mormon kicker came in and won it for us.
That's great.
So that's how the game ended. We ended up, kicking the extra point and winning. But yeah, that was a fun. It was actually BYU's first bowl game they'd ever won too. So that was
wow.
Jim, I'm looking at some of these old, 1980s, 81 teams for BYU. And obviously you referenced Clay Brown yourself, Steve Young's a backup, Visik Ahema, Bart Oates is on this team, Tom Holmoe. But the guy that I want to ask you about, because you're talking about the ineptitude of Chicago's offense when you were there. What would Jim McMahon have looked like had Andy Reid been his head coach and his play caller? Are you surprised that he's doing what he's doing in the NFL offensively when you knew him as an offensive lineman playing at BYU?
Yeah, he was my tackle back in college. I always had a great relationship with Andy. He had a really good relationship with Lavelle. I think he learned a lot coaching-wise from Lavelle. And I was very impressed with him. He was on the staff at Green Bay when I went up to Green Bay in my last year and a half. And very impressed with him, his coaching style. You got to love an ex-offensive lineman that likes to throw the ball. That's what I love about Andy. He loves – same thing. He loves putting points on the board. He's very innovative, and glad to see him do well.
Jim, that gets glossed over. Your time in Green Bay. What was it like going back to Chicago wearing a Packers uniform, wearing a cheese head? I mean, forget about that you were backing up Brett Favre on that team that beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
Well, it was tough for me to go up there. I probably should have went up there 2 or 3 years prior because I knew they were going to have a good football team. But I just couldn't bring myself to go up there and put on that green and gold because we had a lot of bad blood for the 7 years I was in Chicago. A lot of bad blood. It got ugly, our games in Green Bay and in Chicago. So how I got there in 95, the start of 95, I was with the Cleveland Browns. Bill Belichick was our head coach. And he had screwed me over in training camp. And so I'm dressed. I think it's about week 10. We're playing the Packers in Cleveland. So I'm in my Cleveland Browns uniform. Andy's in his Green Bay stuff. We're playing catch on the 50-yard line pregame. Just BSing. And he said, "Oh, you should have came here this year. We got a good team." I said, "I know I screwed up, but don't be surprised if I'm available." And he's like, "What?" I said, "Just check the waiver wire soon." So the very next day, I'm in the quarterback meeting watching the game film. I get up to go to the restroom, and here comes the general manager that has been giving me the runaround for 10 weeks about my paychecks because they did a deal with me under the table, and then they just didn't pay. And so anyway, I said, "I need my money." And he said, "Well, maybe we'll pay you, maybe we won't." And I lost it on the guy, grabbed him. I started hitting his head on the wall. I'm like, "You're going to pay me my money." And then I realized what I was doing. But I looked around, and back then, this is before they had cameras, in every corner of everywhere. And so I walked right into the training room, called my attorney, and said, "Get me cut right now." And he says, "What?" And I said, "Just get me cut. Here's the number." He calls me back within 2 minutes. He said, "All right, they'll release you if that's what you want." I said, "Perfect." So I walked back into the QB meeting now. This all took about 10 minutes. And I just said, "Hey, boys, I'll see y'all later." And they go, "What? Where are you going?" I said, "I'm out of here." And the QB coach said, "Have you talked to Bill?" I said, "You can tell Bill to kiss my ass, that lying son of a bitch. I'm gone." I walked out. That was a Monday afternoon. Tuesday afternoon, I was up in Green Bay. And then we ended up losing the NFC Championship game there in Green Bay. So I stayed one more year. And during training camp, the schedule came out, and I noticed the Super Bowl was going to be on the same day that it was in 85 or 86. And it was back in New Orleans. And I look at Brett, and I said, "Dude, this is folding out just like it did in Chicago." I said, "We lost the NFC Championship game the year before. We're going to have a good team." I said, "It's back in New Orleans on the same day." I said, "Just don't screw this up, man. We can't, we got to get back there and win this." Who would have guessed we're going to play the same team that we played 11 years prior? But that was really deja vu. 11 years later, same day, same stadium, same team, same result, which is great.
And you got to stick it to Belichick too, because Belichick was on that Patriots staff.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Not a nice thing to say about Bill Belichick, man. We could talk all day, Jim.
Yeah,
literally. I want to dive into the Cleveland Browns day. We got to do this again soon. I forgot you were in Philadelphia playing for those Eagles teams. You won the Comeback Player of the Year award, the cup of coffee in Cleveland, and you ended with a Super Bowl championship in Green Bay. Jim, this was a lot of fun, man. We could go on hours and hours.
Thank you,
and
Jim.
hours. We have to do this again.
Okay, guys. Well, you know my number.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you so much. Take care. Glad to see you healthy, talking, and all that stuff. Don't be a stranger, Jim McMahon. We appreciate the time.
Okay, guys. Take care. We'll see you.
Thanks, Jim.